Good evening. Let's call to order the City of Milton Virtual Common Council meeting, Tuesday, March 30th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And can I get confirmation of the appropriate meeting notice?
The agenda was posted at Dave's Ace Hardware, Piggly Wiggly, and Milton City Hall. And it looks like Linda had just come on, so we'll give her a minute to get settled.
Okay, so we just called the meeting to order and confirmed the appropriate meeting notice. I know that there has been a request to possibly move the presentation first before the public comments, and I am not opposed to that if the City Council wants to make that change to the agenda.
I so move.
I'll second that.
Okay, Larry has motioned to move the presentation up and then have the public comments after that, and that has been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And is there anyone opposed? Okay, so the agenda will be changed as has been moved. And is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. For those of you who have not been to one of our city council meetings, we do the Pledge of Allegiance and we look over Inga Cushman's shoulder at the flag and we unmute ourselves and we all say the Pledge of Allegiance together. So I would welcome all of our guests to join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay.
I
I
pledge
pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
and
and justice for all. Thank you. Good job, everyone. I do want to welcome Jenny Salvo. Maybe some of you don't know that she has taken a new position with the City of Milton, and she is our clerk, and this is her first meeting. So we welcome her, and we're really happy to have her on our team.
Good timing, Jenny.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And I look forward to meeting everyone in person at some point.
For sure. So before we get started, we understand that there is a significant number of members of the community here, and we're really pleased to see all of you. As we move forward after the presentation is done, we will take public comments, and they will go as they normally go if you're in person. So you would indicate that you want to make a comment. You could do that by raising your hand, or Inga, is there another way you'd like them to indicate they want to make a comment? Like you can raise your hand using the hand motion in the chat. Those of you on Zoom, you could physically raise your hand. What are other ways, Inga?
What we've done in the past that I think has worked fairly well for public hearings is I'll just go one by one through the list of people that I see, and we can acknowledge each person one at a time and have them speak and go from there. Does that work?
Okay, that will work. So we'll just have, Inga will just call on you if you're a member of the public and ask if you would like to make a comment after the presentation. We will have our comments limited to 5 minutes. And at 4 minutes, we will have Inga or Jenny, you guys can figure that out yourselves. Maybe Jenny could be the timekeeper and just say, okay, you're at 4 minutes. So everybody has the same fairness in making a comment. We also would remind everybody to be very respectful and kind. I understand that this is an emotional issue for many. There's a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings, and we want to hear from you. We also want this to be orderly and a very respectful public meeting. So if it doesn't seem like it's going that way, I will interrupt and we'll figure that out at that point. So I don't anticipate that we'll have any difficulties, but it's a hot topic and we understand that. So I will turn this over to Al, who has put together a presentation, and we anticipate there will be questions and discussion after this presentation.
Thank you. Good. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
You should.
Okay, I just wanted to double check. All right. So for the folks who are on Zoom, you'll be able to see this. The folks who are not on Zoom, we're going to post this to our website either tonight or tomorrow, so everybody can kind of have this and all the other agenda materials that we may talk about tonight. But we wanted to have the opportunity to have this presentation delivered with the context of the presentation and not have it just be kind of a standalone two-dimensional document sitting out there. So there are, I believe, 22 slides, which may sound like a lot, but we'll buzz through the vast majority of them pretty quickly, but then really break down at the end kind of what we, where we're at in this process and how we hopefully are able to move forward in one way or another. So with that, I will start going through the slides. So just a little bit of history. That's kind of the whole purpose of the first half of this presentation. Currently, the Milton and Milton Township Fire Department covers a population of approximately 12,000 people. It covers the city of Milton, the town of Milton, and portions of Harmony, Johnstown, Lima, and Koshkonong at this time. There is an intergovernmental agreement that has been established between the city of Milton and the township of Milton. And up until very recently, that intergovernmental agreement actually didn't even exist. The department, for all intents and purposes, appeared to be operating kind of on a handshake agreement. And that was referenced in both the 2008 and 2015 department studies. And since that time, the Joint Fire Commission has gone through several iterations of that intergovernmental agreement, as well as bylaws and things of that nature. Ultimately, how the department is kind of split up is assets and liabilities are shared equally between both municipalities, meaning the city of Milton and the town of Milton. And that was true up until this year in terms of funding as well. That has altered slightly, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go through the process. The bylaws were revised in 2013. The intergovernmental agreement was revised in 2018. There's been a multitude of staffing models over the past 4 years to try to work with the fire department staff in transitioning from, really kind of a true volunteer department to having some paid on premise, to having some paid on premise and paid on call. And now we actually have full-time firefighters and paramedics for the first time in the department's history since 2019. Over the last probably 2 decades, there's been several kind of attempts to chart a path forward. This issue that we've been having with the Milton Township and Milton Fire Department in terms of staffing and funding and sustainability is not a new problem that was kind of constructed over the last 18 months. Folks on the Fire Commission and previous fire administrations and previous councils and previous town boards and previous fire commissions have really been at this for quite some time. In 2007, there was a planning task force that prepared a report to kind of outline some concerns and some potential paths forward. In 2008, Virchow Krause was contracted to perform a study of the department, and they as well provided recommendations. In 2015, RW Management was hired, and they as well provided recommendations. And the intergovernmental agreement was ultimately revised in 2018 based in large part by some of those recommendations from the RW management study. So I don't want to go through each study individually. If you want to see those studies, they are on the City of Milton's website under the Fire Commission tab. But what I wanted to do was kind of pull out some direct excerpts. These are words verbatim taken from those various planning initiatives, again, dating back to 2007, and I'm sure there was probably some before that too, but trying to keep with recent history. So I had just a few pieces that I wanted to pull out of each one of these to show some consistent themes, not to lead anybody down a specific path, but to really show that this has been an ongoing issue for a very long time, and that multiple entities have looked at it. And it's not something, again, that has come, kind of overnight or at the snap of a finger, that some of these concerns have been attempted to be rectified. The task force in 2007 shared concerns about the sustainability of the department staff. The task force recommended full-time supervisory staff. The task force recommended full-time position would provide consistent personnel supervision that would allow for the budgeting and policy development. So again, some of the themes in that 2007 report were there was the planning task force, which was made up of fire department staff and other stakeholders, really believed that the shift to full-time, or at least a portion of the staff to full-time, was an inevitability. In 2008, Virchow Krause, an independent third party, was hired to study kind of what was going on with the fire department and address some of those concerns brought up in the 2007 report. And again, at the time of that review or that report, there was members of the fire department that believed it was time for the department to make the organizational transition to a combination department by hiring full-time staff to serve the station house during the week. Talked about how the commission should adopt a more forward-thinking approach to capital planning by approving vehicle replacement schedules and establishing a vehicle replacement fund. They believed that a process of formalizing written policies was critical. That EMS operations in the city of Milton had represented the single most frequent type of incident in the Milton Fire Department in recent years, with the city of Milton accounting for over 64% of those calls. That the MFD had been historically made up, had made very little commitment to staff evaluations and disciplines out of concern that increased discipline would cause an increase in staff turnover and volunteer environment. Again, that I bring that up because that's really a very different world than where we live today. Fast forward to 2021, there was a concern about even disciplining back then because of the fear of loss of the volunteer. And this is just 2008. Another recommendation was to increase the operational flexibility for the department by requiring that all new hires hold both state and firefighter and EMT basics at a minimum. But they didn't believe that should retroactively apply to the current members because, again, they were afraid that the current members would leave. So they wanted to make all new members have these certifications, but the old members could stay on without those certifications. In 2015, the RW management study, this one was probably the most robust one of the three that were commissioned. There was deep concern, and I'm sure those members on the Fire Commission who are present here tonight remember there was a lot of conversation about, is the Milton and Milton Township Fire Department even legal? And that led to some of those changes in the intergovernmental agreement in 2018. I think there was some difference of opinion whether that was warranted or not, but nonetheless, that was a big point that got pulled out of that warranted a lot of discussion. RW recommended that the fire chief position be changed to full-time and that assistant deputy chief positions be changed to 3 full-time shift commander positions. There was concern that there is not a standard of cover for emergency deployment, which outlines response time, pumping capacity, apparatus equipments, and so forth. So there was concern about the liability that the department faced. Talked about how the department does not have a long-range strategic plan, which includes stations, vehicles, personnel for the next 5-10 years. Things were just kind of operating on a year by year, case by case, fire by fire in some situations. And the last piece that I pulled out, the township's growth plan and current incident response statistics show no need for improved station coverage, but there is potential to work with the city of Janesville as they look to locate a station near the southern edge of Milton's district. Specific recommendations in these areas are covered in the physical resource section of this chapter. So clearly these reports are long. They're multiple pages, each one, and I've only pulled out a few excerpts. And again, not meant to draw the conversation down any specific path, but more really to kind of show we've been at this a very long time. There have been long-standing conversations and long-standing concerns about the stability and sustainability of the department in the way that it is currently structured and functions. Couple more pieces from the RW management. I won't read them all, but the last one, again, this is 2015, research potential for consolidation and potential joint staffing of a future fire station with Janesville. I don't know if there was conversations about consolidation with Janesville prior to 2015, but this was certainly the first time I saw it in print. And so I think it bears calling that out. Maybe this is where the conversation about consolidation with Janesville started. I'm not sure. But again, I just wanted to point out to people who may not have kind of been following along for years and years and years that this is not a new topic. This is not a new discussion. This is not a new problem. These are longstanding issues that have been talked about for a number of years through various commission members. So some of the takeaways, I guess, that I took from it, and again, I'm speaking just from one person's perspective. I encourage each of you to look up those plans, take a look at them, pull out the pieces that you think are salient. But you know, again, from my perspective, each plan talks about increased staffing model changes, changing some level of staffing to full-time. Each plan talks about increasing contributions from the surrounding townships. Each plan talks about a need to implement more professional staffing initiatives. Each plan talks about the concerns with sustainability of the volunteer model. The 2008 plan appears to be a piece kind of designed for preservation. There was a lot of talk about how do you keep the people who are there, but do some of those other bullet points moving forward. Whereas the 2015 really was calling for some dramatic changes in a really more robust conversation regarding full-time staffing and potential consolidation efforts. So you can see kind of the progression of how these three planning initiatives have transpired. And again, I know I saw Beth and Brian Meyer were on here, and of course Linda and Anissa, you guys have all been part of the Fire Commission for a long time. You probably remember some of these because a lot of it happened before I even came. But so that's kind of, you know, 2007, 2008, 2015. We had these planning initiatives. Now what I did is I went through every single Fire Commission agenda from 2015 on. And I pulled out, not every time there was an agenda item that discussed staffing, but nearly every time. I'm not going to read all of these. It's really more meant to be a visual representation, again, that this has been an ongoing discussion. In 2014 and 2015, we had some pretty serious overruns of the fire department budget that caused a major overhaul in a lot of different areas of the fire department. It's where we started to have conversations about a shared services agreement with Janesville because the model was not sustainable. In 1 year alone, I think we had $180,000 worth of overruns in the budget. And, you know, it became clear that again, was not sustainable. We needed some way to kind of change this model that had worked very well for decades and decades and decades. But as the world around us changed, we were not immune to it as well. We engaged with RW management in 2017 to help with that transition. And you can see on these bullet points, and again, for the folks who can't see them, we will post this on our website, just the number of times we talked about staffing models, full-time paramedic discussion in July of 2019, staffing, wages, and salaries in September of 2019. Full-time paramedics began in January of 2020. New staffing model was discussed in January of 2020. There was revisions to the City of Janesville MOU. First time we talked about $15 an hour was August of 2020. That was literally 6 months after we adopted a staffing model that had $10 an hour. I mean, it's been a process that has evolved, and it sometimes evolved very quickly. But one thing remains the same. There has been a lot of discussions about how do we fix this problem? How do we stabilize the department? How do we fix this staffing issue? So then just in this year alone, we discussed staffing shortages in January, February, and March. In December of 2020, let me just back up one slide. In December of 2020, the Joint Fire Commission, again made up of the town and the city, voted to pursue consolidation with Janesville. That was the vote. In March of 2021, the town of Milton indicated that they are still interested in negotiations with Janesville, but also were seeking to negotiate with other departments. That kind of caused a ripple effect through the system, left the city of Milton trying to figure out, okay, we need to move forward. How do we do that? If we don't know if the town is going to stick to the negotiations with Janesville, we have to continue to figure something out on our end for our citizens. So in March, I think it was March 20th, the Milton Common Council passed a motion to move forward with consolidations with discussions with the city of Janesville unilaterally, meaning that we would continue our conversations with Janesville as we had agreed to at the Fire Commission level in December, but we would do it unilaterally. Doesn't mean that other people were out on the outside, but that we recognize the fact that we cannot, as the city of Milton, negotiate on behalf of other entities. And at the end of the day, if the Joint Fire Commission were to dissolve, if the town of Milton was to go to Edgerton, the Joint Fire Commission would dissolve. There's no two ways about it. It couldn't exist simultaneously. We had to have something. The city of Milton residents needed some fire and EMS protection. So the council resolved to move forward with consolidation discussions with the city of Janesville unilaterally, meaning that we would negotiate on behalf of the city of Milton. If other entities were interested, they could negotiate with Janesville as well, which I understand some have. But that was the motion. Then in the next week, there was a closed session discussion at the Joint Fire Commission about changes to the intergovernmental agreement and union negotiations. And that closed session never happened due to a lot of uncertainty in the air. That's my interpretation of it. A lot of uncertainty about where things were going. Discussion of a union negotiation for a department that may not exist in 6 months. Changes to the intergovernmental agreement that we weren't even aware of. It became too much. So that was just last week. Today's March 30th. We're still in March, and the situation continues to evolve. It evolved very quickly. So, based on the council's decision on March 8th, I think it was, or 20th, I can't remember, to move forward with consolidation discussions unilaterally with Janesville, we've started those conversations with Janesville, and those conversations have been fast moving, but everybody kind of also understands that there is still a great deal of uncertainty out there, and that's what makes this entire situation so challenging. We all know from our respective municipalities that we need fire and EMS coverage. I think the question is what level of service does each municipality expect or want to pay for? And again, I think that's what led the conversation from the council to say, hey, we've got to figure something out for the people who elected us, the citizens of the city of Milton. We're going to move forward just like we promised back in December, but we have to kind of do it alone. So a little bit of historical data. This is kind of calls for the last handful of years. You can see the average call in the jurisdiction. This is not just the city of Milton. This is the entire jurisdiction. is about 986 calls annually, which is it's a good number of calls for a single station to handle. This is some data that really jumps out at me. And again, I think this plays directly to what I talked about at the onset of the presentation. The Fire Commission has tried very hard over a number of years to figure out a way to make this work. Wages and benefits alone have increased 152%. I mean, they've more than doubled since 2014. So I'm not going to say that the Fire Commission has chose to throw money at the problem and it hasn't fixed it, but the Fire Commission has attempted to stay with the market, to try different staffing models, to try full-time people. And I'll point out that the wages line doesn't even include the management payment that's being made to Janesville since 2018. That's just wages to our fire and EMS staff. The total budget for the fire department has grown by over $400,000, or a 66% increase in that same 7-year period. So it's not for a lack of trying. It's not for a lack of funding. It must be something else. And that is, I guess, the $1.181497 million question. What is it and how do we fix it? Those increases to the budget and wages are not sustainable. Our friends in the townships have talked to us about that. Harmony saw a massive increase to their contribution. This is kind of, it's an unsustainable situation. So what's next? Where do we go from here? What are our options? What happens if the Joint Fire Commission is disbanded? Those are all great questions that have not been answered, that likely won't be answered tonight. But I believe the purpose of this conversation, and I'm so glad that we have 40 some participants on here, is that hopefully everybody can hear the same message at the same time from the same voices. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of people that are kind of speculating, and hopefully this helps at least give us a tether point in time. So what we have in front of us, at least for the city of Milton, and that's why at the top it says City of Milton Fire and EMS discussion. It's not that we're not interested in what the towns do. It's not that we're not interested in what Janesville does. But at the end of the day, the decision is the city of Milton and the city of Milton's alone to make. And ultimately, as you will see in each one of these 3 scenarios that I'm going to outline, it's ultimately the citizens of Milton who will make the decision, because each one of these options requires a referendum. So the citizens of the city of Milton, at the end of the day, will probably, they're going to make the decision. So I believe that at this time, there are 3 models available to us. There are 3 models that we have worked on with Janesville and worked on alone. Each one of these models can change, will change, and probably should change, but we got to start somewhere. We have to. Time is of the essence. Janesville has told us that at the end of this year, they are done with the shared services agreement. So something has to change. We cannot stay the same. So the 3 models that I'll present tonight, which are certainly open for discussion, open for debate, and open for holes to be poked in them. But again, we got to start somewhere. So the first model is the full consolidation model. This is the identical model that was presented to the Joint Fire Commission in June of 2020 and again in December of 2020. This is the model that the Fire Commission voted in favor of. This has 18 full-time firefighters and paramedics, 5 full-time firefighters per 24-hour shift. That's the highest level of service we could possibly ask for in our area. All existing municipalities served by the Milton Fire Department would then contract with the City of Janesville Fire Department for fire and paramedic services. All personnel would be employed by the City of Janesville. All finance and human resource services would be performed by the city of Janesville. An annual capital replacement allocation is included in part of this funding model. And this model would require the city of Milton to pass a referendum of approximately $550,000 annually if all towns participated in an equalized value cost sharing methodology. Any one of those towns that is currently represented by the Milton Fire District Fire Department opts out, that number changes, and it changes for all the other municipalities in it. But at the end of the day, those municipalities would be contracting with Janesville. This is what was presented to the Fire Commission. This has not changed. There's no new information here that hasn't already been presented to the Fire Commission on multiple occasions in 2020. These are the budget numbers for it. These are the raw budget numbers. Doesn't have any kind of allocation for the individual municipalities. That information is out there, has been out there for 9 months longer. But again, this shows that, that this is a very expensive model. But if all municipalities were to participate, it could, spread the cost around and make a very valuable service less expensive for everybody. It's not the cheapest model for everybody. There are certainly cheaper models out there, but it's probably the best service provision available. The next model that we have created, this was based on this Milton Common Council's direction to pursue consolidation discussions with Janesville unilaterally. So that's why we called this one the unilateral consolidation model. This has 9 full-time firefighter paramedics with only 3 on per 24-hour shift. Only the city of Milton would contract with City of Janesville Fire Department for fire and paramedic services. If other entities wanted to, they could, but this model only is in respect to the city of Milton. Again, we can't negotiate on behalf of the towns. It's not legal, and it wasn't the direction we were given, and I don't know that Janesville would necessarily like that either. Under this model, all personnel would be employed by the city of Janesville. All financial and human resources services would be performed by the city of Janesville. An annual capital allocation is included as part of this. Under this model, there would be no ambulance housed at the city of Milton Station, though, but there would be a fire engine that is equipped with ALS capabilities. The city of Janesville would retain all EMS collections and 2% dues in lieu of a management payment. And this would require the city of Milton to pass a referendum of about $1 million if no other towns participate. So that's the opposite on this one. 2 slides ago, we said it would be $550,000 if all towns participated. This model up on the screen right now, the full consolidation, only works if multiple municipalities join. But that has dramatically changed based on discussions that have occurred through the multiple municipalities. Council said, let's continue to talk about consolidation with Janesville. What does it look like if we do it alone? That's what this model is. About $1 million referendum. Very expensive. This model is the most expensive and may require an additional referendum in 5 years, but it does provide a much more sustainable staffing model. We have 9 full-time firefighters, 3 per shift. The firehouse is always staffed. There's no paid on premise, no volunteer concerns about sustainability on staffing. The overall budget for this is considerably cheaper, but since it's being paid for entirely by the city of Milton residents in this one, it is the most expensive. The costs shown on this screen are shown on a 5-year average. And the reason we have to show on a 5-year average is obviously as folks start out in the system, they start at one wage, and in year 2, they make a little bit more. And hopefully in year 3, they make a little bit more. In year 4, they make a little bit more. So we looked at a 5-year time frame, and this is the average. The last model we put together is the standalone model. This is if the city of Milton creates their very own fire department. This is very different than all of the conversations we've had up to this point for the last several years, or well, at least last several months. But again, we don't know what the future holds for our surrounding townships. We have to continue to move forward. The citizens of Milton need fire and EMS protection. And, we can't just wait around. At the end of this year, the shared services agreement with Janesville is done. They have made that very clear. So again, something has to change. If we can't consolidate with Janesville, if $1 million referendum is too big of a bite to take, this model does exist. This is the standalone model in which the city of Milton creates its own fire department. We have 6 full-time firefighters and paramedics, only 2 per shift. But this model requires paid on-premise people. There's no other way to do it and keep the cost at a manageable level. This would have a full-time chief that would serve the city of Milton and the fire department. All personnel would be employed by the city of Milton. All financial and human services would be provided by the city of Milton. The city of Milton would retain all EMS collections and 2% dues. There would be an ambulance at the station. However, there would be no capital replacement allocation through this funding model. The hope is that the city could create a segregated fund to allow it to retain fund balance over time, as even the current fire department has seen. Once that kind of was established over the last 2 or 3 years, they have started to develop a fund balance for the first time in a very long time, and that it has come in handy in terms of capital. So that would be our hope here, but that's a big hope. There would be no contract with the city of Janesville at all under this model. There'd be no contract for administration. There'd be no contract for management. We would still have mutual aid. We would still rely on ABS and all the good things that have come together over the last couple of years. But this would be the city of Milton and the city of Milton alone. This also would require a referendum to be passed of approximately $735,000 if no other towns participated. Again, the city would be, the individual towns kind of have to make their own decisions now. We had built a model where everybody could kind of work together, but that has kind of gone by the wayside. We need to keep moving forward. If other towns wanted to be a part of this, we would certainly welcome those conversations. But the citizens of the city of Milton need to know what the future is. This model is one option available to them. This model would provide an enhanced level of service from the current MFD model, but at some point in the future, probably sooner rather than later, it may require additional staffing as these things work out. This is, again, this is the cheapest model in terms of overall budget. Would be less than the full consolidation model in terms of the city of Milton's contributions, but it has far less staffing and probably a lot of question marks with it too. But it does exist. It's an option. And if that's something that we want to pursue or the citizens of the city of Milton want to pursue, this is something that could be put forth. We just got a few more slides. This is really just a visualization if you wanted to see all 3 models side by side. Again, this is probably something when this meeting's done, if you go onto the city's website either tonight or tomorrow, you could pull this up and look at it. And if you've got questions, absolutely, please feel free to contact me. I am not an expert in fire and EMS provisions, but we have relied on a lot of experts to put these numbers together, a lot. These were not created simply by me, believe me. So, questions. Would these models require a referendum? Yes, all of them would. That's almost inevitable, no matter what direction we go. What is the cost of change versus the cost of staying the same? That's a huge question that we need to ask ourselves as a community. There is a lot of emotion, a lot of nostalgia, a lot of pride in what has existed for the last 60 years. And that has a value and it has a cost. We just need to be prepared to answer that question. What level of service do the citizens of the city of Milton expect? That is a very important question. If you remember 2 chiefs ago, again, for those who are on the fire commission, Chief Randy Banker used to say all the time, you tell me what type of fire department you want and I will build it. I don't know that we ever answered that question. Now is the time that we need to do it. What level of service do the citizens of Milton expect? Is a 4-minute response time the expectation? 8 minutes? 20 minutes? Is EMS versus, or is EMT versus paramedic? 63 times in the year 2020, we did not have enough staff at the Milton station to staff the equipment. Is that okay? What are our expectations of service? What do we want from our fire department? Do we care what the name is on the side of the door? Or do we really, is it really important to us to have ownership in it? I'm not here to answer those questions. I think these are things that we all need to consider as we have these very difficult conversations. And then lastly, what happens to the Joint Fire Commission? What happens to the existing station? Right now, to the best of our knowledge, that fire station is co-owned between the city of Milton and the town of Milton. If the Joint Fire Commission ceases to exist, what happens to that building? Where does it go? Who does it go to? The Joint Fire Commission, again, is made up of equal representation from the town and the city. If one of those entities, whether it be the town or the city, were to leave that relationship, what happens to everything else? What happens to the equipment? What happens to the staff? Those are big questions, questions that we need to think about, questions that we probably should do our best to answer. The difficulty in this process is if you ask 100 people these questions, you're going to get 100 different answers. So that's why I think we need to have conversations, robust conversations often. And, you know, the one thing I will say from where I sit, the city of Milton has been incredibly transparent about this. Our perspective has not changed. Although I don't vote on the fire commission or the city council, I've seen all of the conversations and we haven't wavered. We know that something needs to change. We know that there needs to be improvement. We were committed to full-time staffing. We made that happen. We're committed to providing good equipment. We've been making that happen. And we believe that we need to continue to move forward. I believe it is our council's opinion that we should chase solutions, not dollars. That is the end of my presentation. There's a lot of information there. I know most of you are seeing this for the very first time. For those who are not on Zoom, it hopefully wasn't too difficult to follow along. Hopefully I hit the highlights, but if there are questions, if we want to start with our council or however you want to do it, Mayor, I think that's about where we were at.
Thank you very, very much for that presentation and all the studying and research that went into it. I know it took a lot of time. And I know that you were very thorough. So thank you for that. And for anybody that assisted too. So what the council voted on was to have public comments after the presentation. So we'll go with that and we'll have our 5-minute limit. And I will turn this over to Inga to find our first individual that would like to have a public comment. Remember, it's first, last name, and address.
Okay, so the first person on my list is Nancy Lauder. And you just need to unmute yourself. There's a button in the lower left-hand corner, I believe. Or here, I'll do this.
Am I,
Yep,
I have
yep.
audio, thank you.
Nancy, we'll start you it's 6:44. We'll have you start, go ahead and start, but it'll be 6:45. We'll just round up.
Thank you.
6:50 will be when you end.
Okay, what in all of this ocean of information and shifting things, what I find unfortunate is in the beginning, so much was not written down, and now so much is changing. Just for the simplicity of speaking only for the city so that we can speak as one voice, I would pursue, although it may not be the correct answer, to have Milton stand alone so that we can speak as one entity. It has been very complex to speak for the township and for the other individual organizations that are part of this group. If we go forward as a single entity of a city, I think it will be less confusing as a voice to go forward, because this is the entire world has shifted from a volunteer-based organization and one that did farm fires, which for grain elevators and for cattle are a different set of dilemmas than for a city fire, which is basically usually a house. The training is different. What is it that you do want? To continue to be both rural and urban? At least if we go forward as a city, we can make up, hopefully, a less diverse answer, because a lot of the problem is that we don't speak as one voice at this point. So that would be what my comments would be, is to focus on going forward as a city so that you can form one answer. I thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And it's 6:47, so excellent work.
Thank you.
Okay, and if I say your name and you don't want to speak, we'll just give it a couple seconds and then we'll move on to the next person. B. Fry is the next person that I see, if you'd like to speak. And just a reminder, if you're on mute, it's in the lower left-hand corner.
It took a minute
He's
to come up.
he's currently out on a fire call.
Okay, so we can go back if we need to then. Beth Drew, I don't know if you want to say anything tonight.
No, thank you. I'm fine. I'm just watching.
Okay. Brian Meyer, did you want to say anything tonight?
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Al. It was a very good presentation. I really don't have anything to say. I appreciate that the city needs to figure things out and find a focus. And I know it's not a single focus at this moment, but I do appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so the next person I see is Carol Watson. If you can state your name and address.
I don't need to speak at this time.
Okay.
Gathering information. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks for joining us tonight. Jeff Clens, did you want to speak tonight?
Yeah, I can just say that I appreciate the presentation that Al gave us. It helped a little bit in regards to the situation. But I also want to make sure that everybody understands that the town of Harmony has to look out for itself. And I don't believe that just because we have talked to Milton Township and or the city of Edgerton's fire department, that we've actually made a decision at this point. But we also realize that this is something that has to be taken care of rather quickly, because even though you guys have to have a referendum, the town board feels that we would definitely want to make sure that our taxpayers have the voice in what's decided here. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person I believe is Tom Kunkel. Did you want to speak at all tonight?
I'm good right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chris Lucas, did you want to say anything tonight?
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm currently driving on the interstate, so
Yes, we can hear
can
you.
everybody hear me?
Be careful.
I would just like to, am I
Address?
good to go? I would just like to say that there is probably no one involved in this that has more skin in the game than I do. And I completely understand and appreciate the difficult situation that we're in. I just wanted to make a couple of points known. Number one, the current staffing model at times does fall short. There is the Milton Fire Department has never not been able to respond to a call. There have been calls that we've used mutual aid for, but there isn't a department in the area that doesn't use mutual aid. It's a good department. There's a reason why a lot of people from the Milton Fire Department get hired into full-time departments. It's because of our training. It's because of our experience, our run volume, and things like that. And as I said, I probably have more skin in the game than anybody involved in this. I've probably been doing this longer than anybody else when it comes to this department. I don't stand behind one model versus the other, but I do support whatever we need to do to get more full-time people into the station. That doesn't discredit anything that from paid on premise or paid on call. They do a good job. I often hear the term professional fire department thrown out there. And just because you get a bigger or a bigger paycheck doesn't mean that you're more professional than the other. The current fire department, whether they're paid on call, paid on premise or whatever, we all train to the same standard. The NFPA 1001 standard is standard for professional firefighter. So I think that you're doing a good thing by checking out all these different options. Again, I don't really stand behind 100% one or the other. I'm a little nervous about only having a staffed engine company in the city of Milton as a citizen, but I understand that everything comes with a price. Be rest assured that the current fire department that you have will continue to answer the call, continue to take care of the community the best they can, and we'll be there when you need us. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chris. There is someone on that is COLLICOTTT. I don't know if they want to speak at all tonight. Sometimes they don't come in as names, it's just abbreviations, so I wasn't sure.
No, I don't have anything to say. I'm just listening. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Thank you so much for moderating. Can we just remind people first and last name and address? Thanks.
Thanks, Anissa. The next person I have is Dave Halvensblin. Is that how you say it?
Just listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Jack M.
No, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Jerry Larson.
I'm just listening. Thank you anyway.
Okay, thank you for joining us tonight. Jessica M., if you wanted to say anything.
I'm just listening. Thank you.
Great, thanks for joining us as well. Jenny Lucas, did you want to speak at all tonight?
Jenny Lucas, 1012 Dickoff Drive, and I just want to say that as a citizen of Milton, I do not support the one that does not have an ambulance in the station.
Thank you, Jenny. Jeremy Parker, did you want to speak tonight?
I have nothing at this time.
Thank you. Marcy Granger, did you want to speak or are you just listening tonight?
Just listening.
Thank you. Mary M. Okay. There's someone named Matt on. Did you want to speak at all tonight? Okay. Maxine Striegel, did you want to speak? Okay. Mike B, did you want to speak tonight?
Nope, just listening.
Okay, thank you. And Tim, I see your hand raised and I'll come to you in just a moment. Maxine, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I couldn't get the mute to unmute.
That's fine. Can you state your address?
210 Dairyland Drive.
Thank you.
I would like to say Chris has done a good job and been around, but I think I beat him in being around in the fire department business for a long time. I would like to say I, of course, if I was sitting there, would go for the standalone. And I would like to ask what happens to all of our equipment if you go to Janesville? And if we have such a, I've been told that the city is growing so fast and so good, and we've got subdivisions coming and we've got chocolate business coming and we're doing so good, all that revenue, and then we are going to get rid of our fire department when we really need that. And I still feel we should have one place on one side of the tracks and a fire truck at least on the other side of the tracks, because there's getting to be more train traffic too. So that was about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Maxine. Milton Whitford, did you want to speak tonight? No. There's.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
Milton Whitford, 305 Rogers Street. I guess I would be curious. I appreciated all the reports from Mr. Hulick, but I don't recall seeing what the revenue has been over the last several years. And when I say revenue, I mean the revenue from calls, ambulance calls, standby fees, etc. I don't remember seeing that in any of the presentations.
If you want, I could answer that real quickly. It's okay, Anissa. It's up to you.
If you're going to be quick, you only
Yeah.
get 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Sure.
The revenue lines are in each one of the options, and that's we'll put that online. The revenue piece of the full consolidation has been out there since last June, and I think it was about 175,000, if I remember correctly. Under the full consolidation. Under the unilateral or standalone, it's about 85,000.
You had 250,000. Looks like.
I was pulling it up right now.
It's 250.
250. Okay. So 250 when all municipalities are involved, 85,000 when it's just the city of Milton.
So based on the 900 some calls for service and the standby fees that were paid, it works out to be $250,000 in revenue a year.
That's correct.
On a budget of $1 million.
Correct.
And have there been any studies as to what, about looking at our rates that we're charging and how much our standby fees are, et cetera?
From my perspective, yes, there has been. On the fire commission level, there was discussions about, we actually changed our billing, our EMS billing companies back in, I think, in 2015 or 16. And it's not so much what you charge, it's what you're able to collect. I don't want to speak too much. Again, this isn't my full area expertise, but whether you charge $1,000 or $100, it comes down to what percentage are you able to collect. And Medicare has consistently decreased their amount of amount they will pay irrespective of the cost. So that has been a contributing factor to the decline of revenue per call over the last decade or so. I think that's the best way I can answer it at this time.
Okay, well, and the only reason why I bring that up is I do have a background in accounts receivable management, and I am a former fire commission member and city councilman. So, and I know in the time that I spent on the fire commission, I believe we increased standby fees and fees for service at least once. I'm thinking twice, but I could be wrong. So that's why I'm just a little concerned about the disparity between the total budget and what you're saying we're generating in revenue. And I don't want to exceed my time limit. Thank you very much for your information this evening.
Okay, thank you for speaking. There is someone on tonight, OPIE. Is that someone who wants to speak tonight? Pete Morey, you're next on my list. Did you want to speak at all?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Okay. R. Calhoun?
Rob Calhoun.
Hi there. I had told myself when I got on tonight that I wasn't going to speak. I was just going to sit back and listen. But
I'm sorry, just quick. Can you state your name and address for us?
Yep, no worries. I'm sorry. Rob Calhoun, 8310 Northridge Trail. I actually live in the township of Milton. Member of the Milton Fire Department for a number of years, on and off. Giggle. Just a couple of points that I want to bring up, and I know some of the other people on the Zoom meeting have mentioned this, but maybe a question to Al and the city council members and to the Milton town board members that are on. Has anything been thought about existing equipment and vehicles and compensation? As far as I know, those vehicles have been purchased and the equipment has been purchased 50% from each of the municipalities. So when each department talks about, or each municipality talks about going separate directions, a standalone versus being contracted with other municipalities, has there been any thought about how we're going to compensate each of the other municipalities on the monies that have been put towards that equipment that would be split up or go to one of the fire departments that have been mentioned? My other points is Al had talked about at the end or at the beginning of the budget increasing exponentially over the past number of years. The only thing that I can say to that is when you're working with pennies on the dollar, as the fire department has for the number of decades prior to probably the 2010s to the 2020, the only way that you can go is up. You've got a heck of a deal. The townships, the city have gotten a great deal on fire protection by having a paid on call volunteer department. And when you're moving to that career level, the numbers are obviously going to go up. So again, I can appreciate again appreciate the money that has been given to the fire department and the increase in wages and the full-time people that we have. But again, when we're having a great deal and your budget was as low as it was for as number of years, the only way that you can go is up. And I think we're probably at the point where a lot of other departments are at this point. So again, thanks for letting me speak, and my best for everybody involved. I hope we all can work together here.
Nisa, do you want me to address the equipment question?
Yeah, Al, I wasn't sure if that had been any consideration of how that equipment would be divided up and compensation for that.
Right. So the intergovernmental agreement that the city of Milton and the town of Milton does have a dissolution section which talks about the dissolution of assets. And Rob is 100% correct. In essence, each piece of equipment is 50% owned by each municipality. Certainly, we're not going to saw an ambulance in half and give the front half to one and the back half to another. But there hasn't been a conversation at this point as to who gets what. But the intergovernmental agreement outlines how that should transpire. And I think that's exactly why I ended my presentation with what happens with our stuff is in essence kind of what I said. And I think that question gets answered as we progress through these discussions. If the town of Milton contracts with the Edgerton Fire Department, what do they need? Do they need one of the engines? Do they need one of the ambulances? Do they need the station? If the city of Milton creates a standalone department, what do we need? In some ways, we would need it all. But the intergovernmental agreement spells out exactly kind of how that should transpire and whether a third-party arbitrator would need to get involved in order to settle any disagreements or disputes. Not that there would be. The only discussion that's taken place at the fire commission level to that point has been the requisition of an appraisal of all equipment. So we have an idea of kind of what exists out there and what are the current values. That changes as time goes on, but that process is underway. But to the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been any conversations about, okay, if we go this way and you go that way, we get this and you get that. I think what would happen is there would be an appraisal done of all equipment. The two entities, depending on the directions they go, would hopefully come to the table in good faith and say, okay, we need this, we don't need that, we need this, we don't need that. And then, there's at the end of the day, everybody ends up with 50% of what the total value is of the equipment. That would be my hope. A long answer to a short question. We haven't had those conversations, but we know that how the process would work if we were to go that direction.
And you can always donate your time to Al if you don't want to speak.
Okay, so the next person is Sainer. Did you want to speak at all? And if not, we'll go to Tim Tollefson next.
Thanks, Inga.
Yep.
First of all, thanks, Al, for the presentation. It answered a lot of the questions that I had sent in to you guys earlier. And thanks to Al and Mayor Welch when they reached out to us in Harmony. I'm sorry, Tim Tollefson, 5818 North Kennedy Road, Milton. When they reached out to us to talk, which was just a couple weeks ago, and I have to say, I think our head was spinning at the time with what the hell's going on. So we really didn't have a lot of questions or answers at the time. But the one thing I will have to say, for the townships, I can't speak for Lima and Johnstown, but for those townships whose proximity is closest to Milton, we're going to kind of depend here on a lot of communication between the city of Milton and the town of Milton with the townships to the east of Milton. I know these decisions have to be made quickly, and I hope they are made quickly wherever it goes. We're probably 2 months out from starting to look at budgeting for next year. And we really don't want to get caught in a crunch to come up with money. I can say that probably on behalf of Lima and Johnstown also. But so I just wanted to say, I think it's going to take a lot of communication. I hope we can stay in touch as this thing progresses, because I think the three of us out there are kind of in limbo. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. The next person on my list is William Schrank. Did you want to speak tonight?
Oh, no.
It's okay, Maxine. I'll mute you for you. There you go.
If you're not, yeah, if you're not muted, try to mute yourself. That's helpful for everybody to hear if they're called on to speak. Thanks.
Okay, so the next person on my list is Tom Chesmore. You're still on, right? And
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And
Yep,
please
still
state
here.
your address.
Tom Chesmore, 345 Elm Street. First of all, I would just like to say that I appreciate Al's presentation. As someone who spent a few years in the Milton Fire Department and sat in the chairs you council members are sitting in and sat in the mayor's chair, I understand the responsibility. Do I miss it? No. I just cannot figure out for the life of me why we're going the direction they're seem to be heading is towards Janesville. Janesville has a history of swallowing up everything that they can get their hands on, and I think they're basically threat that I got from Al from the first presentation. They were going to stop doing some intergovernmental agreement or something. That seems like you're kind of putting a gun to somebody's head. I wouldn't be overly thrilled with that. I can't figure out why the life of me anybody want to be an employee of Janesville when you're sitting on the Milton Fire Department. I have a feeling that Milton will be swallowed up. The fire department will be non-existent. The Milton Fire Station will become Janesville Station number 6. I can't see it. I like the standalone thing. I am a little bit concerned about the manning issue, but that's something we could address in future conversations. I can't fathom Milton losing its anonymity to Janesville. I'd rather see us go talk to Edgerton and create a fire district with them than I would the city of Janesville. City of Janesville, I don't like them. I think they're evil and mean. I think as for the equipment, it's my understanding that there's something out there where the city of Janesville would actually get all of our equipment. We still have to pay the township for it if they decided not to come along, but the city of Janesville would get all of our equipment. I don't like the idea of having not one ambulance in the city. I think that's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I don't know. You guys need to, the township and the city need to sit down. Things have worked in the past, and sit down like adults and respect each other's, place at the table. Instead of one treating the other one like trash or down talking to them all the time, come to the table as equals, sit down, work it out, go with the Milton Fire Department, stay away from Janesville, because the thought of Janesville coming in and taking over all this stuff, I know it scares me. It bothers me a lot. And as someone who's invested a lot of time into that fire department, a lot of time into this city, it's just be sad to see Janesville come in and take it away. I appreciate the time to talk. Thanks.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Tom. And if you can mute yourself again. Yep, there we go. Perfect. There is someone with a phone number with the last 4 digits as 1598. If you'd like to speak, you just need to unmute yourself. It is *6 in order to unmute. And if not, V Heritage, did you want to speak at all tonight? Okay. Did I miss anyone on the list? I think I hit everyone, but there were a couple people that came in while we were in the middle, so I don't want to miss anybody. So if you want to speak, just unmute yourself and we can start there.
Could I say something again?
I'll
Jeff
let
Klintz
Mayor
from
Welch.
the Town of Harmony.
Chairman Duff, since you did not use up your entire 5 minutes, we will give you 2 minutes.
Thank you. I just recalled having conversation with the city of Janesville. And the first time I had conversation with them, they told me that they couldn't cover more of our area. So during this whole situation, I've been kind of perplexed as to how they planned on covering the town of Harmony if they take over the city of Milton Fire Department. The other thing that I had conversation with them, and they assured me that once they take over, the city of Milton and or the town of Milton and or the town of Harmony would have no say-so in what takes place with the fire department. And I was also assured that if the costs of operating the fire department, if they were not accurate in regards to the cost, that the cost would be passed on to the taxpayers, pretty much no questions asked. And I have to agree with Mr. Chesmore. I'm very fearful that the city is going to take over, and just like a lot of the area of the city of Janesville, they expand but don't take care of the area that they already have, and I'm very fearful that that's what would happen with this get together here. That'll be it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak tonight? I am not hearing anyone else, so Anissa, I'll turn it back over to you then.
I want to thank everybody that spoke tonight. We really do appreciate your input. We are pleased that so many took advantage of the opportunity to speak with us. We will continue to engage with the community. This is not the end of us seeking input and discussion and thoughts. And we all, just like all of you, you know, you care about your citizens, you care about the community, the council, the staff, myself. We care deeply about the residents and providing fire and EMS to them. We want people to feel safe. That's one of the biggest responsibilities a municipality has, is to keep their residents safe. So I know that we all want the same things, and we will figure this out. We don't have years to do it, but we will figure it out, and we'll keep everyone engaged. We will be transparent. And as questions come up, please feel free to call or email us, and we will keep moving forward, and we're going to figure it out. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being so respectful. And as we turn it over to the city council members for their discussion, just continue to please keep yourselves mute. We won't have any further engagement with the public. Public comment is now closed, but I just want to repeat that we are going to continue to have engagement with the public throughout this whole process. And for those of you that called in, I want to thank you. I know that not being able to see the presentation can be challenging, but that will be up on our website for you to look at. So, all right, we're going to go to the council, and I have two pages or two screens full. So council folks, if I can see you, that will help. I wish you were all on the same page, but you are not. So I'm going to start with who I have on page 1. And who I have on page 1 for council is Ryan. And Ryan, what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you go ahead and talk for a few minutes. Try to keep it under 5. We'll have all council members talk once, and then we'll come back and see if there's a second round that city council wants to have. So Ryan, if you want to go ahead.
I actually want to wait till after the three that are on the fire commission talk first. I wanted to have them talk first, I think.
Thank you for throwing your
And then
wrench.
I'll go in after that. I just want to hear what they say first.
No, I appreciate that and understand that. Okay, so I'm going to move to my second page then. And you know what, we'll go to the fire commission members first in case there's other council members that want to hear what they say first. All right, let's start with Bill Wilson, please.
Okay. I also wanted to thank everybody who participated. I think Al's presentation has been helpful even to those of us who've been living it with the Fire Commission recently. Really great summation. I do want to kind of provide my bottom line, and my bottom line is a full-time fire department. The rationale for that has been the ongoing staffing issues that have been there. That's the reason that I really have seen any talks with Edgerton as a non-starter. If you have a volunteer operation and another volunteer operation, both of which are having problems filling shifts, putting them together is not going to solve that problem. And consequently, my bottom line really becomes a full-time department. I do want to commend the current department for the service. It's been a real bargain. And frankly, it's been a bargain for everyone because of the fact that the wages have been so low and the service has been so good. We do have a professional department. The problem is we're not able to provide enough professionals all the time that we need to have all the professionals. The source of that really seems to be the non-full-time model. So back to bottom line, full-time. The other comment that I'd like to make is a feeling that the city really does have to act somewhat independently, regardless of the direction that we go. We really can't go to referendum on the basis of hoping that towns, whether it's the town of Milton or the other townships, will participate because we won't know what to ask the public in terms of the referendum. The dollar amounts change, the equation changes unless, in fact, we do negotiate on the basis of each of the entities involved. And that means town of Milton doing an effort. That means Harmony doing their effort and so on. But we can't move forward based on hopes that towns will participate. The final thing that I'll mention is something that I share the thought of a couple of folks who mentioned a scenario that does not have an ambulance in Milton. That one is really troubling. We may need to look at the model that has no ambulance and decide whether there's an option to an option. Because that one, given the demographics and given the nature of the predominant number of calls, is a really, really important service to make sure that we're providing. Thank you.
Okay, Teresa.
Okay, unmuted. Much like Bill, I want to thank everyone. Thanks to Al for the presentation, and thanks to everyone that came tonight to participate or just to listen to hear what has been said. A couple of things that came across to me tonight were a lot of the threads that seem to pass through the things, conversation that was brought up, as well as things that came through Al's presentation. When I started with the Fire Commission, we had begun to set up the evaluation through RH, and many things came up, as Al pointed out, through that evaluation, and concerns by many people, both in the community and within the Fire Commission and personnel. And those concerns had to do with safety and personnel and working together on the commission, because that obviously had a direct impact on those areas. And some of those, or most of those things, continue today, and they came up over and over and over again, just about every year, and as he pointed out, on many of the agendas. And I think that when people ask, why haven't we addressed them? Well, we've tried. And I don't mean just we as the city, we've tried to work together on it, and we're just having trouble all coming to some agreement on how to resolve those issues. And much like Bill pointed out, I also have to agree that having an ambulance on site is significant. And when you talk or look at the data, that is a significant use in this area. So those would be my issues. Thank you.
Okay, Linda.
And I'm going to echo what everybody else has said, in that this presentation, Al, was very good. Being on the commission for as long as I have, I think that you did an awesome job with the history. And it doesn't really matter how far back we go with the history here in the department with what we're doing here. One of the things that is very important, and what I just adamantly want to point out, is that no matter what we have done and how many times we have addressed it and how many times we have changed it, if we do not have coverage in our department, that is not acceptable. I don't believe that that is acceptable to the citizens of the city of Milton. Now, and I have worked with a lot of people prior to this council, and I have worked with a lot of the town board members prior to the current board, the Milton Township Board. Everyone has the very same goals. We all want a successful department. We all want to be able to pay our people. We all want to have a facility that is good enough for them. We want them to have benefits, and these are things that we have been working on. History for me is going from building to payroll to benefits to building to payroll to benefits. And this is it's just been a vicious circle. We are to the point now, even during COVID, where we have so many calls in our department, we really just have to get focused on the future and what we have coming. The services that we have in our department have been professional. Well, of course, we want to keep them that way. Of course, we want our people to have a living wage so that they can take care of their families. But the bottom line too, and part of our problem, even prior to COVID, as soon as the Affordable Care Act came out, guess what? Our ambulance became the clinic on wheels. I mean, there's a lot of different variables that affect how we can serve our community. I'm concerned about not having a full-time station. I am concerned about not having an ambulance there in a Milton station if we do decide to do a standalone. But you must realize adding that ambulance is adding more cost to it. And that's why we're at where we are today. I'm very thankful to everyone that has come and spoken to us today. And I know that all of us sitting on the commission have been working diligently to just try to get everybody taken care of and give them what we think is the best. And I guess what I would ask from our community is please give us feedback. But I am going to say with gratitude that our Milton Courier has been very good about putting information about what we have had going on in our fire department. And I will tell you, because someone did speak about communication at one point in time, it actually wasn't until just of late that we started recording our meetings. Prior to probably, I'm just going to take a guess here, prior to 06, if you wanted minutes from the fire commission, you had to go and do a public records request. This is a group of people that don't like to put their names out there. They believe in what they do. They don't like to be patted on the shoulder for it. And that is something that we have worked through for the last 20 years. Being able to say thank you and them saying you're welcome, because they just didn't want their names out there. But it's different now. And we've got to make sure that we are transparent. And I, for one, as a commissioner and as a city council member, we are going to be transparent to the community. And I would just ask you to make sure that you check on where you're getting your information at. Please call Dan or call Al if you have questions about the numbers. The last thing that we need to do for the people that work in this department is to create a lot of confusion throughout the community, because these people are very serious about their jobs. And I just want everyone to just keep that in mind as we go through this process. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Larry?
I won't be beat you all over the head with what's been said already, but I would like to add a couple things. I do think a full-time staff is what we need in the fire department. I'm not just saying that because I live in the city of Milton now. Before I moved down here to the city of Milton, I lived in the town of Greenville, which is just outside of the Appleton metropolitan area. And I call it the metropolitan area because when I built my house there in 1989, my son could ride dirt bikes in the fields next to the house. There was horses in the neighbor's farm. And by the time I moved down here to Milton in 2009, the entire area was built up. And my point being, I served on the city council or the town council at that time, and I was on the fire commission, and we were dealing with these same sort of issues. And the reality is that areas grow, and we certainly can't deny that this area is growing. The population is growing, construction is growing, businesses are growing. So we do need a full-time staffed department to respond to those situations that are going to come up now and 10 years from now. And I want to point out that I do agree that an ambulance is necessary. I want to, that model that's presented to work with Janesville, that will be a definite discussion point from my perspective. All three models, there has to be an ambulance present with the populations that we're serving and the amount of people, no question. We all know that if someone's having a heart attack, you need to respond within 10 minutes to that heart attack, or there's going to be severe damage to that patient and maybe even their death. So an ambulance is critical. If you look at all three models, if we go with a full staffing on all three models, then your costs are going to equal out. So I think everybody has to be aware of that. The community members and the citizens need to realize that in order to accommodate that, the costs are going to go up in those other two scenarios. And the last thing I want to point out is I'm not fearful in working with the city of Janesville, and here's why. We've been sharing the fire chief with Janesville for quite a while now, and it's been working pretty effectively. My understanding is the department is functioning pretty well, and that's due to the membership of the department, but it's also due to their working in conjunction with Chief Rhodes. So I realize that it's scary. I realize that the thought of consolidation or merging, or when those discussions come up, communities get really fired up. But I want to point out that right next to us, the county right over next to us, Jefferson County, has a county-wide fire service in place that's been working pretty effectively. La Crosse County has a county-wide fire service that's been working pretty effectively. Milwaukee County has a county-wide fire service along with the local communities around it. So this is what's coming. And so my point is, this is really an interim. This 5 years or 10 years that we'll get out of this model will likely change. And I'm pretty sure it will change as this area continues to grow. And maybe at some point we'll end up with a county-wide system as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to my other page. Thank you, everyone so far that's spoken, and we'll go with Ryan. Hey, Ryan, I can't hear you. It doesn't show that you're muted. I see your lips moving, but I can't hear you. Try again.
How about now?
Yep.
I can hear you
There we
now.
I'm not going to add too much more probably, but I also just want to say that I'm not sure I like the idea of not having an ambulance in the city and having to wait for an ambulance to come from Janesville, or the option where it's just us merging with Janesville and the consolidation there. And I think it may have been confused earlier when it mentioned the standalone having no ambulance, but I believe the standalone option did include an ambulance. So I'm not sure I like that idea. It would be worthwhile to see what it costs us, I guess you could say, to have an ambulance be posted there, to fully understand if that's the best route to go. I guess that's if we go down the consolidation route one way or the other, we kind of now know what our high end is. We kind of know what, for the most part, what our low end is if other city townships join in as well. But for the most part, I guess that's my kind of biggest issue I saw with this, is that I think we need to have an ambulance here. Besides that, I think full-time is the route to go. That's what all three options show. And I think this is a very nicely put together image for us to see with all the details and stuff like that. That's it.
Okay, last but not least, Kevin.
Thank you, Al, and everyone involved in the presentation. It was very well put together. I thank everyone for their comments and insight. I really don't have anything else to add. I think everything else was very summed up. I will just say that ambulance service is crucial.
Okay, thanks, Devin. does anybody else have any on the council? Does anyone want to talk again? Is there any action you want to take? Any direction you want to give us? One thing I did want to let you know is that we have spoken with Wisconsin Policy Forum to give us some outside analysis, if that would be a possibility, if they could do that in a timely manner. And they have indicated that they could. So we're going to have a follow-up meeting with them and have them look at the options that we have presented, and we would get more objective analysis that I know that some of the community had requested, that maybe having some outside eyes look at some options for us would be helpful. And we are willing to do that. The only other thing I would say, and I am not pushing anyone in any direction at all. I want the community to decide and for us to provide what the community wants for fire and EMS service. But I don't know how that works with an engine having advanced life-saving instead of an ambulance. Like, I don't know what that means. I do know it doesn't mean that we have to wait for an ambulance from Janesville necessarily if an engine has advanced life-saving, but that's the only comment I would have, because I don't want the impression to be that we're looking at a model where there is no life-saving measures available to the residents, because that, and I'm open to having Chris Lucas answer that if he wants to add, like, what does that mean?
Yeah, that was going to be my that was going to be my suggestion too. That recommendation obviously came from Chief Rhodes speaking on behalf of Janesville, and indicated that advanced life service it doesn't take the place of an ambulance transport, but can provide some of the same services. But Chris is much smarter than I am, so I see he unmuted.
I think he said that he was driving though.
I'm good. I'm pulling in my driveway, but I can answer the question. It's not that long to answer. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Basically an advanced life support engine. I believe in that model. It would be what we refer to in the city of Janesville as a paramedic engine. So there is at least one paramedic, more than likely two, on the engine that carries all the equipment, all the drugs that an ambulance would carry, and basically can initiate the same paramedic care until an ambulance gets there for transport. So the medical care would be there in roughly the same amount of time. And they carry all the equipment and drugs that they would need to initiate that first round of care. And by then the ambulance should be there for transport.
That's helpful. All right, so we have discussion, direction, and possible action. So is there do you want to narrow down to two models, or what does the council want to do moving forward? Because we're obviously going to meet next week again, but I guess, is there a preferred two? Is there a preferred two that you would like us to have Wisconsin Policy Forum investigate more? Don't all raise your hands to talk at once, because it would confuse me.
Anissa?
Go ahead, Linda.
I'm wondering if, as everyone is looking at these costs, Dan and I had a discussion about the full consolidation model and the Milton and City of Janesville consolidation.
the two things that we need to understand with these two models is this includes the FLSA overtime requirement. Whereas the costs, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, the cost on the standalone model does not include that. And then the full consolidation model has our capital included. I think that that's very important to point out.
The wages, what make up the wages, whether it's FLSA, FICA, Social Security, those are all the same in all three models. The wage rates may be different, but what makes up those wage rates or what makes up those wages are identical. So that there's no change there. You are correct about the capital piece. There is a capital component in the full consolidation, but not a capital component in the standalone model. As far as wages and benefits go, or as far as benefits go and what make up those wages, they're the same. So the first half of your question was not exactly correct. Second half was correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a question. So when you're talking about the standalone model not having a capital component,
right?
Would we do something for this, like similar to what we do for our police? Like, how do we do the capital component for police protection?
Yeah, so, and Dan and I have talked about this at great length, and I kind of mentioned it in the presentation. What we would do, if that's the direction we go, and, understanding that especially in this issue, things seem to change almost every 24 hours. But at this time, on March 30th, what we propose to do is set up the fire department as a segregated fund. So all expenses and revenues stay within that fund. And in the event that, we underexpend in 1 year for whatever reason, or over realized revenues, it would stay within that fund. And we would hope over time that fund would grow to a fund balance that we could utilize to offset at least some of the capital costs. If there are costs that it would exceed that, especially in the first couple of years, they would become part of our city capital improvement program. Similar to, the example that you used about squad cars. We purchase 1.5 squad cars every year. Luckily, we wouldn't need to purchase an ambulance every year, but we could hopefully utilize fund balance to offset a portion of that. And then if 10 years down the road we need to fund it, it would be part of our annual capital allocation. So it would be treated by the same as all other equipment is within our fleet of equipment, with the segregated fund hopefully offsetting that. So it actually would be more similar to the library than it would be to the police department in that regard, because there would be a segregated fund that we would capture those overages or underages.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any, Linda, I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna put you on hold.
Sure.
Anybody, if you could please mute yourself, thank you. Is there anybody else on the council that has follow-up questions or a preferred two models you would like us to look at in depth more? I mean, you don't have to, I'm just asking.
Well,
Lisa?
yes, I mean, certainly I would, look at the standalone model as one of them. But then the other two, it's, you look at the unilateral position versus the consolidated one. I mean, do we look at the consolidated one and then, rely on the potential for a number or a certain few townships based on that amount of money coming in to support it? Or do we look more at the unilateral model in planning that we would be the only group that would be joining with Janesville. You know, I guess that's
Yeah.
would be the difference.
And you're exactly right. And you know, it goes back to Bill's comment. Almost irrespective of what direction we go, we have to somewhat kind of at least go under the pretense that we're going alone.
Yeah.
And the reason being is exactly how Bill put it. You know, we know we have to go to referendum. And as much as we would certainly welcome conversations with the town, and we, you know, if they wanted to join on and we could find a cost sharing methodology that made sense for all entities involved, we would absolutely pursue that and welcome that. The question is we can't take 2 steps forward to take 3 steps back 2 months from now.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened to us at the Joint Fire Commission. We moved down a path for 6 months and then all of a sudden took 10 steps back. So if folks are serious and are committed to it, yes, we want to have those conversations. We need to have those conversations. But at some point, there needs to be an end date. And because we need to prepare for a referendum.
Right.
And as Bill said, we can't prepare for a referendum with, well, we think the town of Harmony or the town of Lima may come along, so let's ask for $100,000 less than what we actually need, only to find out on November 2nd that they're not coming along, you know, and then we start in the hole. So yeah, I mean, there's a level of seriousness to this that hasn't existed before. And
Al, if you're only going to charge us $100,000, we might be able to sign something tonight.
Yeah, sure. See, there you go. We've already got somebody interested.
See, we got an opening bid. Is there 105? Anybody take 105,000?
At that, there's some levity to the conversation too. But I'm serious. I mean, there's a seriousness to this that we can't continue to take 2 steps forward and take 3 steps back and have the rug pulled out from underneath of us over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. So in that case, then I would say the unilateral and the standalone models would be the two to pursue.
And does anybody on the council want to speak to that? Pursuing the unilateral and the standalone, Larry?
Well, yeah, I would. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just future oriented. I've always been that way, so this is where my comment is coming from. I do believe in my heart that we should look at the unilateral and the standalone. However, I believe in my heart that within 5 to 10 years, these conversations are going to be happening again to some form of consolidation of fire and EMS services. And that all the townships around and the city of Milton, the city of Janesville, probably even going down to Beloit and the town of Beloit and everywhere in between. This conversation is going to be coming up again. So I really believe that the standalone model will work for the next 5 to 10 years. But I don't believe it's sustainable in the long term. And that's why I think the unilateral conversations are important, and the invitation. I'm really open, and I think the rest of the council is, so is everyone here tonight, to have conversations about how to integrate all the surrounding townships and communities in an effort to address the need for fire and EMS in the area. Thank you.
Hey, Larry, just for clarification, do you want us, or are you thinking of then, like Teresa said, the standalone and the unilateral consolidation?
Yes. But if I was voting tonight, I'd be voting on the unilateral. Just
okay.
So you know.
Well, let's see where this takes us. Bill.
Yeah, was going to say basically what Al said, based on the fact that we really can't do the referendum unless we, on the hopes of dollars coming from the townships. And so consequently, I think what we should pursue is the standalone and the unilateral. If in fact the town of Milton is also talking to Janesville, it's easier to put together the consolidated model after the fact. Likely there are going to be some cost savings that would accrue to that. That could be a good situation for us to be in terms of passing the referendum based on what might be considered worst case scenario. The unilateral city of Milton only. If in fact concurrent with our referendum, there's a referendum for the town of Milton to do a similar consolidation. That's something that could be worked out. So I'm for looking at the standalone model and the unilateral city of Milton, city of Janesville consolidation.
Evan? What I'm looking for is there 2 models that you'd like us to pursue? Can we get down to 2?
I would agree with the unilateral and the standalone.
Okay, and then let's see, Ryan?
Bill basically took exactly what I was going to say for the most part, but I kind of agree with going down the standalone and the unilateral as well. I think that it'd be nice to do the full consolidation. I think that's kind of a nice hope, but it requires everybody else to be on board and fully on board all the way through. And I think that we'd be better off preparing for, in a way, a worst case of that version where we've had to pay the most. And so going down the unilateral makes sense there. If we have other townships come back on board or go on board with this, then maybe it'll help reduce the cost down. But it's something that we can kind of at least plan for just in case we're going down the little unilateral route.
Okay. Linda?
I am in support of the unilateral at this point in time. I'm sorry, but I just cannot get my arms wrapped around a standalone at this point in time. And I'm gonna just say, for the same reasons that Larry mentioned. Folks, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've spoken to a lot of people from the League of Municipalities. Consolidations are not something new, and they didn't just start when we started it. These things have been going on for a very long time. And it's not that I don't believe that we can, that we won't have people in our department. I just feel like, and I might be wrong. I will certainly keep my options open, but I just certainly feel like we're going to be back here in another 5 years looking at this. But I will say that the good thing about either of these is that hopefully we, as a city, will be able to pursue our commission and committees and have citizens on our fire commission as opposed to elected officials. I think that's the very key thing right there.
Okay, so when I'm talking about narrowing it down to 2, and many have spoken about unilateral and standalone, it's really just to get analysis. It's not, I'm not asking anybody to say this is what our referendum question is. It's just, could we narrow it down to 2 to get further analysis? So that's what I was thinking of when I was asking for some sort of consensus, if there was one from the council. So is there anyone that would like to make a motion, or Mark? Well, we could just have a motion to direct staff, to either narrow it down to 2 or 1 or 3, or however you want to make it. I was hoping for 2.
Yeah, I think the direction, at least what I'm picking up, Dan and I haven't chatted about it, but I think the direction is fairly clear. There's definitely some interest in the standalone model, and there's definitely some interest in continuing conversations with Janesville in terms of a consolidation. And hopefully, as we pursue those 2 options concurrently, if there are other entities that want to join us sooner rather than later, we can have substantive conversations along the way, and perhaps that changes the dynamic, but it changes the bottom line too. So I think that we could go that route.
So I think I would like to have a motion for clarity. And
Bill has his hand up. I'm sorry.
Bill, thanks, Al.
I would move that we direct staff to do further analysis on the standalone model and the unilateral model. And just one comment with the motion, that being, this is not saying anything negative about the town of Milton pursuing what's best for the town of Milton. And in fact, I think moving in this direction kind of clears the air. And it says, we really expect all of the townships to do what's in the best interest of their own residents. So if the other model happens, that's great. But the motion is directing staff to do further analysis on the standalone model and on the unilateral City of Milton, City of Janesville model.
Second. Is there a second? Okay, Ryan seconded it. Okay, so is there any further discussion? Larry?
I just want to reiterate, it's really important. I think that we want all the townships involved to feel free to continue discussions with us, with Al or Dan or the chief or whatever, because we're trying to get a handle on this. And if there's interest in coming along or continuing with us in a working relationship to make this work, I'm very open to that, and I'm sure the rest of the council is too. So,
Linda, did you have something to say regarding the motion?
I was just wondering, are we going to have this information for our next meeting? Are you thinking 2 meetings out?
I can't really answer that this second.
Yeah, I mean, we, as you can see, we've been throwing a handful of curveballs really quickly in quick succession here. It's like Ben Sheets at the mound, but we're able to put together information pretty quickly. But again, it comes with the caveat of if the dynamic changes, every day that passes gets closer to there being a drop dead date. Again, we have to prepare for a referendum. We have to know what we're communicating to the community. And even if our referendum ends up being 2 questions, we still have to tell them what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't be, well, this plus a hope and that plus a hope. It's got to be definitive.
And I'm willing, I'm willing to have a regular council meeting. We have 2 council meetings a month, and I'm willing to, on the other weeks, have a council meeting that just talks about fire and EMS, or public discussions or forums, or I'm willing to do that and to ask the council to commit to just a really heavy schedule to be transparent and to keep moving along. So I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get us going and to be thoughtful at the same time, right? It's not about rushing through it, but it's about being mindful that we do have a timeline and to make sure that we're being thoughtful at the same time, really. So there's a motion and a second. I know Mark is probably like, what the heck? All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, so that motion passes, and we will continue to look at those two options. That will be our focus. And you guys did great, and so did everybody joining us tonight and listening in. Is there any general items? Our next meeting is next week, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Al?
No, yeah, next meeting next week, 1 week from today. We'll have some regular business on there too.
Just quick to note, that meeting is on a Wednesday
Yes, yes.
because
that's
of the
right.
election.
Absolutely important to note.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Good call. Good call.
It's still at 6 p.m.
Mhm.
I think it's still going to be by Zoom. And does anybody else have any general items? Linda?
I just want to remind everyone that of the Easter egg hunt this weekend. A lot of fun stuff going on. Be safe about it.
And there's a Dairy Queen too.
Yes, and there's a Dairy Queen, and we have ice cream in Milton.
And I
And we're
think
going to
that
have chocolate too.
I think the Easter egg hunt is actually April 10th, the following weekend.
Oh,
Because this week's spring break, I assume that's why they moved it.
Okay.
Thanks, Courier, for concurring with me.
All right. If there's not any further general items, is there a motion? And I just want the council to thank me for not doing team building. We could have had a really big team building effort here, 2 pages worth of people. I just want to get acknowledged that I didn't make you do that. All the marks on the Zoom meeting. I'm talking to you. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, staff. Thank you, council. And thank you,
Thank you all.
everyone that's joined
Thanks,
us
everybody.
this evening.